The old farmer stepped into the Citibank slowly, as if each foot had to adjust to the polished tiles that were nothing like the dusty ground of his village. He carried a small cloth bag tucked under his arm, holding the documents he had protected all the way during his long bus ride. His clothes were plain, worn from years of working under the sun, and his hands showed the roughness of soil and weather. To him, coming to the city was always a little uncomfortable. But he had no choice. His account problem needed fixing. And he hoped someone in this big building would understand. He looked around, trying to figure out which counter he should go to. Everything seemed louder, faster, and more rushed than where he came from. People in clean clothes walked past him without noticing. Some held smartphones, typing quickly, while others complained loudly about waiting times. The farmer felt slightly lost. But he tightened his grip on his documents and moved toward the main desk, where the manager's office was. Inside, the bank manager sat behind a shiny wooden table. Acting busy even when his screen clearly showed social media, he barely lifted his head when the old man appeared at the door. The farmer gently knocked and asked if he could get help regarding his savings account. The manager's eyes moved slowly from the screen to the farmer's face, then down to his clothes, his hands, and the old cloth bag. The look he gave was not warm, it was sharp, judging, almost irritated, as if the very presence of the farmer was disturbing him. The farmer didn't understand the silent judgment, but he felt the discomfort right away. "What do you want?" the manager asked, without politeness. The farmer spoke softly, trying to be respectful. He explained that he had traveled far and needed the manager to confirm a document related to his account. His voice trembled a little, not from fear, but from exhaustion. The manager cut him off mid-sentence. "Show me your slip," he said. Leaning back in his chair, the farmer carefully opened his cloth bag and took out the neatly folded papers. He placed them in front of the manager with both hands, almost as if they were fragile. The manager didn't even touch them at first. He glanced at them with a dismissive look. "You people don't understand simple things. Why didn't you go to the help counter first?" he said. Shaking his head, the farmer replied that the help counter sent him here because it was a matter requiring the manager's approval. But the manager waved his hand as if the explanation annoyed him even more. "You should come on a different day." "I'm busy." There was no sign of busyness in the room, no clients waiting, no meetings scheduled, no urgent calls. But the farmer didn't complain. He simply said, "I came from very far today. Please, if you can just look at it once." The manager sighed loudly, grabbed the papers, and started flipping through them carelessly. The farmer stood quietly, watching the manager's face for any sign of understanding. Instead, the manager made a mocking sound. "Where did you even get these documents? They look like you kept them in a barn or something." The farmer felt a sting in his heart at the insult. He had kept the documents safe with great effort. He didn't expect such words from someone who was supposed to help. Still, he did not argue. He simply said, "I kept them safe, sir. They are clean." The manager rolled his eyes. "Clean? These are barely readable. And what's this signature? It's so shaky." He laughed a little, as if it was a joke. A couple of staff members standing near the door heard the manager's tone. They exchanged glances, unsure whether to step in or stay silent. They felt uncomfortable, but the manager was known for his short temper. No one wanted to get on his bad side. The farmer shifted his weight, embarrassed. He had always written slowly, because he didn't go to school much, but he tried. He always tried. And hearing his efforts mocked by someone half his age made him feel smaller and smaller. "Why do you people always come without understanding anything?" the manager continued. "Do you even know what's written here?" The old man nodded softly. "Yes, sir. I read it at home many times." The manager smirked, as if he didn't believe a word. He pushed the papers aside. "Come after 2 days. Maybe then I'll have time." The farmer's heart sank. 2 days meant more travel, more expense, more trouble. He took a slow breath and said, "Please, sir. I have animals to feed at home. I came early morning. If you can just check it today." The manager's patience snapped. "Did you not hear me? I said come later. Why are you wasting my time?" People nearby turned their heads. Some felt bad for the old man. Others shook their heads, recognizing the manager's behavior, but feeling helpless. The farmer's back bent a little. Not because of age this time, but because of humiliation. Even then, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply tried once more. "If you don't help me, I don't know who will," he whispered. The manager stood up from his seat abruptly, as if the farmer had said something offensive. "Who will?" "Anyone except me today. Go stand outside. I'll call you if I feel like checking your papers." His voice echoed through the office area. A few customers froze mid-step, shocked by the disrespect. The farmer held his papers close to his chest, afraid they might get damaged. He walked out quietly, his steps slow and heavy. He stood near the chairs outside the manager's room. The wooden seat creaked as he sat down. He looked at the papers again, brushing off invisible dust. Not because they were dirty, but because the manager's words made him feel the need to clean them. To prove they were worthy, the minutes felt long. Every time he looked toward the door, he saw the manager laughing with another employee, sipping tea, scrolling on his phone, anything except checking documents. It wasn't busyness. It wasn't workload. It was simply the manager showing power over someone he thought was too weak. It's too simple, too unimportant to matter. Yet the farmer stayed. He wasn't stubborn. He wasn't trying to challenge the manager. He simply didn't have another choice. He just hoped that someone would have enough kindness to understand his situation. And as he waited, unaware of what was about to change, small whispers moved across the staff. Some felt guilty, some angry, some nervous. They knew the manager's attitude was wrong, but they couldn't imagine how quickly everything was about to turn around. For now, the farmer sat quietly, his eyes tired, his hands folded over his papers, carrying not just documents, but dignity that had been shaken, but not broken. The old farmer sat on the wooden chair outside the manager's office, trying to calm the worry slowly growing inside him. He kept his papers pressed against his chest, as if holding them tighter would somehow protect him from all the harsh words he had just heard. His journey from the village had been long and tiring. He hadn't imagined this kind of treatment waiting for him in the city. He thought banks were places where people helped you, guided you, explained things step by step. But today, he felt as if he had stepped into a world where his age, his clothes, and his slow way of speaking made him invisible or worse, unwelcome. He tried to distract himself by watching the people around him. A young man in a clean shirt hurried to a counter, tapping his feet impatiently. A woman carrying a handbag stood in line, scrolling through her phone without looking up. Another man argued loudly about a late transaction. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry, stressed or annoyed. No one looked at him. No one smiled. It felt as if he didn't belong. He shifted his position slightly, and his back made a small, cracking sound. He ignored the discomfort. He was used to physical pain. Years of bending over crops had trained his body to accept aches. But this pain, this hurt from disrespect, was something he never got used to. A staff member walked by, pretending not to notice him at first. But then she slowed her steps and turned slightly toward him. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, with a kind expression in her eyes, though she seemed careful not to draw attention. "Uncle, did you eat anything? You look tired," she said softly, keeping her voice low so the manager wouldn't overhear. The farmer smiled gently. "No, child. I left home very early. But I'm fine. I just want this work done." Her face softened. "I'm sorry for how he spoke to you. He's like that with many people. Just wait a little. Maybe he'll call you?" The farmer nodded. He didn't want to get her into trouble, so he didn't say much. She walked away with a small, encouraging smile. That one small kindness felt like a warm hand on his shoulder. Minutes turned into more minutes. The clock on the wall kept ticking loudly. The farmer tried not to glance at the manager's office too often. But each time he did, he saw the same scene, the manager laughing, talking, scrolling through his phone, making no effort to look at the documents. It didn't feel like waiting for help. It felt like waiting for mercy. At one point, the farmer stood up and took a step toward the door. Maybe he could try again. Maybe he could explain himself better. But as soon as he approached, the manager looked up with irritation. Didn't I tell you to wait? Why are you standing here again? He said sharply. The farmer immediately stepped back. I was just... Go sit down. I'll call you when I'm free. The old man quietly returned to his chair. He did not complain. He did not raise his voice. But inside him, something felt heavy like the weight of soil after a storm. A man sitting a few chairs away leaned slightly toward him. Baba, you should complain about him. This is no way to treat anyone. The farmer smiled sadly. I don't want trouble. I just want my work done. The other man sighed. You're too patient. That's the problem. But patience wasn't a weakness for the farmer. It was something he had learned from years of farming, waiting for rain. Waiting for crops to grow, waiting for seasons to change. He believed that with patience, things eventually fell into place. But today, he felt unsure. He closed his eyes for a moment and remembered his village. The fields, his small house, the animals waiting for him. He remembered waking up before sunrise, feeding them, finishing his chores quickly, and walking to the bus stop. All for this bank work. His village had no big branches, no complicated counters. That was why he had to travel so far. He wondered how long it would take. He wondered if he would make it home before nightfall. But most of all, he wondered why people judged others so quickly. Why a simple old man, in simple clothes, became someone undeserving of respect. The staff near the front desks kept glancing toward the manager's office. They knew he wasn't busy. They knew he was doing this on purpose. But fear kept them quiet. He had complained about employees before. Some had even been transferred because they questioned him. So everyone kept their heads down. Time passed, slowly, stretching like a long shadow. The old farmer rubbed his knees to ease the stiffness. He tried to stay positive. Maybe the manager would call him soon. Maybe things would turn around. But the minutes kept slipping by without change, after a while. The young staff member from earlier walked by again and paused. He still hasn't checked your file, she whispered. The farmer shook his head. Not yet. She bit her lip, frustrated but helpless. Just hold on a little more. Something might change. He appreciated her words. They gave him a tiny bit of strength to sit up straighter. The bank's security guard approached the farmer next, offering him a glass of water. Uncle, drink this. It's a hot day, farmer accepted with gratitude. Thank you, son. Even small kindnesses felt large in moments like this, but the manager inside remained the same. Every time the farmer's name came to his mind, the manager would push it aside. There was no sympathy, no urgency, only the desire to show control. At one point, the manager even said loudly to someone on the phone, "These villagers come here expecting royal treatment. They don't even understand the basics that 10-year-olds know." The farmer heard it. He wasn't meant to hear it, but he did. He felt the words like small stones thrown at him, but he still did not respond. He reminded himself quietly that losing his temper would only make things worse. He inhaled deeply and said to himself, "Let me just finish this work, then I won't need to come here again." People around noticed the hurt on his face. Some wanted to speak up but didn't. Some felt bitter toward the manager. Others silently admired the farmer's strength. And then, after what felt like forever, something unexpected happened. A buzz of movement spread through the bank. A few employees straightened their desks. Someone whispered, "They're here." The farmer didn't understand what was going on. But the staff suddenly looked alert. One of them hurried past him and accidentally dropped a file in panic. Another fixed her scarf quickly. The young woman who had spoken to him earlier walked fast toward the entrance. The farmer looked around, confused. It was as if a wind of seriousness had blown through the building. Then he heard the security guard say to another staff member, "The board members have arrived for inspection." The old man blinked. Board members? He didn't know much about bank ranks, but he knew these were important people. And inside, the manager finally put down his phone and sat up straight, adjusting his tie quickly. His face changed completely, not a trace of the arrogance he had displayed minutes ago. Everyone in the bank suddenly paid attention. The farmer didn't know it yet. But the moment these board members walked through the door, Everything was going to change. For now, he simply sat quietly, unaware that the disrespect he had endured all morning was about to meet a turning point he could never have predicted. The same man who treated him like he meant nothing was about to face the very thing he thought he controlled, and the old farmer sitting silently in the corner would soon witness how unexpected life's balance could be. The moment the board members stepped through the glass entrance, the entire atmosphere of the bank changed. It was like someone had suddenly switched the air from casual to strict. Employees who had been relaxed a minute ago now sat straighter, adjusted their ties, fixed their hair, and pretended to be deeply focused on their work. Even the security guard stood taller, as if guarding a palace instead of a bank. The farmer looked around, trying to understand what had caused the sudden tension. He didn't know the people who had entered, but he could tell from their confident walk and the way everyone reacted that they were important. They were dressed simply but neatly, carrying files and tablets, talking in calm, purposeful voices that the young staff member who had spoken kindly to the farmer earlier hurried over to greet them. She bowed her head slightly and guided them toward the manager's office. The farmer watched her move with nervous steps, her hands tightly holding a clipboard. She didn't look relaxed anymore inside the office. No. The manager stood up so quickly that his chair rolled back a little and almost hit the wall. He smoothed his shirt, wiped his forehead, and put on a smile that seemed too wide, too quick, too forced. He reached for a file on his desk and shuffled through papers as if he had been working intensely the entire morning. When the board members entered, he greeted them loudly. "Welcome, welcome. We weren't expecting you today, but it's always a pleasure." One of the board members, a tall man with calm eyes, simply nodded. But the woman standing beside him, a composed figure with a steady gaze and gentle manner, looked around the room carefully before speaking. "We planned a surprise inspection," she said. Her voice was warm but firm. "We want to see things as they truly are." The manager laughed nervously. Of course. Everything is in perfect order." The farmer, still sitting outside, couldn't hear their conversation fully, but he noticed how suddenly polite the manager had become. It felt strange to see the same man who had shouted at him earlier, now smiling like a salesman. The board members walked around the office, checking documents, asking questions, and observing the staff. Whenever they approached someone, the employees straightened, answered carefully, and hoped they wouldn't get asked anything too difficult. After a few minutes, the woman board member, the one whose presence quietly commanded respect, stepped out of the office to look around the waiting area. She walked slowly, noticing tiny details others would ignore. A crooked sign, a messy table, a staff member rushing nervously, customers waiting longer than usual. As she turned her head, her eyes fell on the old farmer sitting quietly in the corner. Her steps slowed. Something about him caught her attention. His clothes, his tired eyes, the way he held his papers like they were something precious. She studied him for a moment, then approached. The farmer looked up, unsure whether she was coming toward him or someone else. When she stopped in front of him, he folded his papers quickly and tried to stand. No, she said gently, placing a hand in the air. "Please, sit. You're fine." He nodded and sat again, feeling slightly nervous. Important people always made him nervous. "How long have you been waiting?" she asked softly. He hesitated. He didn't want to complain or get anyone in trouble. "A little while," he said, trying to smile. She looked into his eyes, and in that brief moment, she understood everything he was not saying. "Did the manager attend to you?" she asked. The farmer looked down at his hands. "Not yet. He told me to wait." "Did he look at your documents?" she asked again. He shook his head slowly. "Not yet. He said he was busy." Her eyebrows lowered slightly, not in anger, but in disappointment. She knew the manager's tendencies well. She had received complaints before, but without evidence, she couldn't act. This, however, felt different. Something in the old man's voice, his humble posture, made her want to understand what had happened. "May I see your papers?" she asked kindly. The farmer's hands trembled slightly as he opened his cloth bag and handed her the documents. He felt worried, but her gentle manner reassured him. She held the papers carefully, reading each page with full attention. Her expression remained calm, but the more she read, the more her eyes softened. She finished scanning the last document and looked at him again. "These are very important papers," she said. "You should not have been made to wait this long." The farmer's eyes widened slightly. He didn't know how to respond. "Stay here," she said politely. "I'll be right back." She walked toward the manager's office, holding the farmer's papers. Her steps were calm but heavy with purpose. The staff watched her with big eyes. They knew she did not walk like that unless something serious was on her mind. Inside the manager's office, he was busy giving oversweet explanations to the board members. "We provide excellent customer service. Always putting our clients first," he said proudly. The board members listened politely, though one of them looked doubtful. Without knocking, the woman entered the office again. The manager turned to her immediately. "Yes, madam. Is everything okay?" he asked, trying to keep his voice cheerful. She held up the farmer's papers. "Can you explain why this client has been sitting outside for so long?" The manager blinked. His smile faded for a second, then quickly returned. "Oh, him," he said casually. "He came without proper understanding. His documents are confusing. I told him to wait so I could check them later." The woman narrowed her eyes. "Confusing? These documents are clear. Very clear." The manager swallowed. "Well, I didn't get the time to review them properly. We've had a busy morning." "Busy?" she repeated calmly. Everyone knew the bank had been quiet all morning. The board members exchanged glances. They could sense something was wrong. The woman stepped closer to the manager. Her voice stayed soft, but it carried a weight that made the room still. "Do you know who that man is?" The manager straightened, confused. "He looks like a villager with some small land issue." The woman looked at him longer this time. "He is not just any client. He is one of the bank's highest value account holders, and he is someone this institution has respected for many years." Silence dropped into the room like a stone. The manager's face turned pale. His throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The woman continued, "I know him personally. My father and his family have known each other for more than 20 years. He has contributed greatly to this community. And you made him sit outside like he was unimportant." The manager shook his head weakly. I didn't know. I didn't realize, but you judged him the moment you saw him," she said firmly. "Not by his documents, not by his words, but by his clothes, his age, and his simplicity." The other board members looked at each other with clear disappointment. One of them said, "We can't allow this behavior in our bank. Not toward any client, big or small." The manager stood frozen, feeling like the ground had dropped beneath him. His earlier confidence vanished completely. The woman gently placed the farmer's documents on the table. "Step outside," she said quietly. "We need to speak with him directly." The manager nodded stiffly, his legs suddenly feeling heavy as he walked toward the door. Outside, the farmer looked up as the board members approached him. He didn't understand why such important people were walking toward someone like him. The woman smiled gently and said, "Sir, may we sit with you?" The farmer blinked, surprised. "With me?" "Yes," she said warmly. "With you." The tension in the bank grew. Everyone watched. Everyone listened. No one imagined this moment would happen. The farmer slowly nodded. He didn't know what was coming next. He didn't know that the morning of disrespect he had endured was about to turn into something completely unexpected. He only knew that for the first time that day. Someone was looking at him not with judgment but with respect. The moment the board members took their seats, the entire bank felt different. It was as if the walls themselves understood that something important was about to happen. The old farmer, who had spent the whole morning patiently sitting in the hot corridor, watched quietly from a distance. He had no idea that he would soon become part of a conversation that would change the direction of the day. The manager, who had been full of confidence and pride earlier, took a long breath as he stepped inside the meeting room. He tried to act as if everything was normal, but anyone watching closely could see a slight shake in his hands. He knew he had to be careful. He also knew that if he made even one wrong move, the board members would notice. Each board member opened their folders and began reviewing the bank's quarterly reports. The room stayed silent except for the sound of pages turning. The manager stood at the front with a fake smile, trying to look relaxed. Though inside he felt as if he was standing on a shaky rope. One of the board members, a woman with sharp observation skills, looked up from the papers and said, "We heard some complaints about how customers were treated this morning. We will talk about that shortly." Manager's throat tightened. He forced a smile and nodded, pretending he knew nothing about it. But his mind flashed instantly to the old farmer outside, the man he had dismissed and humiliated without a second thought. Now he wondered if that small moment was about to become a big problem. As the meeting continued, the board discussed finances, future plans, and expected improvements for the branch. The manager answered each question carefully, trying not to let his nervousness show. But the board members were not blind. They watched his reactions, and his forced confidence only made them more curious. Finally, the conversation moved toward customer service. The same board member closed her files slowly and leaned back in her chair. "Before we continue," she said, "we want to ask about something that happened this morning. Your staff reported a disagreement between you and a customer." The manager swallowed, feeling trapped. "Oh, that. It was nothing serious," he said quickly. "Just a small misunderstanding with an older man." He was confused. "I simply explained the bank rules to him." The board members exchanged looks. His answer had actually made things worse. Who was confused? Another board member asked. "You or him?" The manager forced out a small laugh. "Him, of course." He didn't seem aware of how things work here. The oldest board member, a calm but firm man, looked at the manager with a steady gaze. "We don't judge customers for where they come from or how they speak. We serve them. That is the rule of this bank." The manager felt sweat forming on his forehead. "Yes, sir," he said softly. Another board member added, "We take customer treatment very seriously, especially when the customer is elderly. We got feedback today from multiple staff members saying you spoke to the man with disrespect. Is that true?" The manager's heart pounded. "I may have been a little firm," he said, "but only because we were busy. I had a meeting with all of you, so I gave him quick instructions and asked him to wait." "Firm or dismissive?" the woman board member asked. Her voice stayed calm, but her words felt sharp. He hesitated. I didn't mean to be dismissive." Perhaps he took it the wrong way. The board members were not satisfied. They closed their files as if preparing to address the real issue now. "We would like to speak to the customer ourselves," the oldest board member said. "Is he still here?" The manager's eyes widened. His mind flashed again to the farmer sitting outside waiting, quiet, unnoticed by most, but remembered by all staff who saw the way he was treated. "He might be," the manager said quietly, but he wished more than anything that the farmer had already left. One of the board members stood up. "Then let's meet him." The manager's stomach dropped. "Do we really need to?" he asked, instantly regretting the question. "If he is still here," the board member replied, "then yes. His voice matters." The manager had no choice. He stepped outside with the board members walking behind him. Every employee watched as they passed through the lobby. The manager's face looked pale. Nothing like the confident man who had been bragging about his power just hours earlier. When the manager reached the waiting area and saw the farmer still sitting there, his heart sank. The old man sat calmly, his hands resting on his knees, looking neither angry nor impatient. He simply waited. The board members approached him respectfully. The oldest one spoke first. "Sir, we heard there may have been a problem earlier. We want to know if everything's okay and if you were treated properly." The farmer looked surprised. He slowly stood up, a bit confused as to why such important people were talking to him. "I'm fine," the farmer said politely. "I was just waiting for my turn. I didn't want to bother anyone." His gentleness made the staff watching from the counter press their lips together. They knew he was being honest. He wasn't the kind of man to exaggerate things. The woman board member smiled kindly. "We appreciate your patience, but we also want to make sure you were not spoken to in a disrespectful manner. Did everything go smoothly?" The farmer thought for a moment. He didn't want to get anyone in trouble. "Well," he said softly, "it did feel like I wasn't wanted here at first. But I don't hold anything against anyone. I know people are busy." The manager felt a rush of embarrassment and fear. He avoided eye contact, looking down at his shoes. The oldest board member spoke gently. "Sir, you deserve respect, no matter how busy the bank is. You shouldn't feel unwelcome." The farmer nodded. "That means a lot," he said quietly. Then came the moment no one expected. The board members exchanged glances again, not of surprise, but of recognition. The old man's face, his voice, his manner. They knew who he was. They had been waiting to meet him for weeks. The oldest board member stepped forward with a respectful smile. "Sir, are you the same farmer who sent a letter to our headquarters regarding the land development partnership?" The entire room froze. The manager's mouth fell open. The staff stared in shock. The farmer looked a little unsure, but finally nodded. "Yes," he said slowly. "I sent a letter. I wasn't sure if anyone received it." Every board member bowed their heads lightly in respect. "We received it," the board member said, "and we came here today to meet you personally. Your proposal is the reason for this visit." Silence filled the bank. Not a single person moved. The manager felt the ground disappear beneath him. The man he had treated as unimportant, man he made wait, the man he dismissed as someone who didn't understand. Banking was the very person the entire board had traveled to meet. The manager lowered his head, feeling the full weight of his mistake, and the farmer, humble as always, simply stood there quietly, not realizing how deeply he had changed the balance of power without saying a single harsh word. The entire bank stood silent after the board members revealed why they had come. No one moved, not even the manager, whose face had turned pale. The farmer looked from one person to another, still confused about why so many people seemed to care about him. The oldest board member stepped closer and said, "Sir, your letter reached our head office. We were very impressed with your idea. We decided to come and meet you personally before moving forward with anything." The farmer blinked slowly, unsure what to say. He had written that letter weeks ago, sitting at his old wooden table at night, using his shaky handwriting to describe a small dream that had lived quietly in his heart for years. He never expected anyone to read it, much less respond to it. "I didn't think it was that important," the farmer said softly. "I just wanted to share my thought. I didn't want any trouble for anyone." The woman board member shook her head kindly. "Your idea wasn't trouble. It was smart. And it came from someone who understands the land, the people, and the needs of this area better than most." Everyone in the bank listened closely, realizing that the quiet old man sitting in worn clothes was far more knowledgeable and respected than they had assumed. The manager felt as if the walls were closing in. He kept replaying every rude word he had spoken earlier. He remembered how he had waved the farmer away, how he had acted like the man wasn't worth his time. Now the same man was receiving the kind of respect even he rarely got. The oldest board member turned to the manager. "We would like to use your office for a private discussion with this gentleman. He deserves proper hospitality." The manager nodded quickly, almost too quickly. "Of course, sir. Yes, absolutely, please. This way." For the first time that day, he walked toward his office without trying to show power. His steps were quiet. His arrogance had disappeared. He held the door open for the farmer, something he should have done from the beginning. The farmer stepped inside slowly, almost feeling shy about sitting in such a clean, shiny office. The chairs looked too soft for him, the air smelled of expensive polish, and he wondered if he should even sit down. But the woman board member gently encouraged him. "Please, make yourself comfortable. This discussion is for you." After everyone took their seats, the meeting began. The atmosphere was warm and respectful. They asked the farmer about his idea, what inspired him, and how he imagined it developing. The farmer answered honestly. He spoke in simple words, just like he lived his life. He explained how the land around his village had great potential. He talked about the hardworking families who lived there, how they struggled, and how a partnership with the bank could help them grow crops better and sell them at fair prices. He shared that he didn't want anything for himself, only that his community could live more comfortably and that the younger generation wouldn't have to leave the village for survival. The board members listened carefully, taking notes. Not one person interrupted him. Not one person laughed or dismissed his thoughts. The respect in the room was real. After he finished, the oldest board member leaned forward and said, "Sir, your plan is not only thoughtful, but practical. With the right guidance, it could become a model for many rural communities." The farmer looked down, humbled. "I am not a smart man. I just know the soil. That's all." Sometimes the board member replied, "Knowing the soil is smarter than knowing 100 books." The farmer smiled faintly. It was the first smile he had shown since morning. They continued discussing details for a while. The farmer answered every question honestly, never pretending to know something he didn't. His sincerity impressed them even more. When the meeting ended, the oldest board member stood up and said, "We want to take this forward, and we want you to guide us through each step. If you allow us, we will start the partnership soon." The farmer felt his heart grow warm. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know what to say. I never expected so much respect." "You earned it," the woman board member replied. "Not with money or position, but with your character." The farmer felt tears gather at the corners of his eyes. He quickly wiped them, not wanting anyone to think he was emotional. But everyone in the room understood. When they walked out of the manager's office, every employee in the bank watched them. They watched how the board members stayed close to the old man, how they spoke to him as if he were someone important, someone whose ideas mattered. The manager followed behind, silent and ashamed. He felt the weight of his earlier behavior pressing down on him as the farmer reached the counter. The clerk, who had offered him water earlier, gave him a warm smile. "Sir, would you like anything now? A refreshment?" The farmer shook his head gently. "Thank you. You were kind to me from the start. I won't forget that." The clerk felt touched. Kindness had returned to him from the most unexpected place. Before leaving, the oldest board member turned to everyone in the lobby. His voice carried calm authority. "Let today be a reminder," he said. "Never judge someone by their clothes, their appearance, or where they come from. Respect costs nothing, but it gives everything." The entire staff nodded quietly. Even customers waiting in line felt a change in the atmosphere. Finally, the farmer walked toward the exit. His steps were slow, but there was a different energy in him, one of confidence mixed with humility. He had come in the morning as a simple man seeking help. Now he was leaving as someone valued, respected, and listened to. Just as he reached the door, the manager hurried forward and spoke in a quiet voice. "Sir, I want to apologize for how I spoke to you earlier. I was wrong. I misjudged you without knowing anything about you." The farmer looked at him gently. "Young man, respect should not be given based on knowing someone. It should be given because it's the right thing to do." The manager lowered his eyes, feeling the truth hit him deeply. "You're right," he said. "I will remember this." The farmer gave a small nod. "Good. Treat everyone kindly, not just the ones who look important." With that, he stepped outside into the warm sunlight. The board members walked with him to the car they had arrived in. They opened the door for him with genuine respect, and he thanked them politely as he drove away with them. The rest of the bank staff watched from inside. The employees whispered to one another about how the day had changed everything. They talked about how their manager had learned an important lesson and how the humble farmer had shown that true strength never comes from status, it comes from character. Inside the bank, the manager returned to his office with slow steps. He closed the door behind him and sat quietly for a long time. He knew he had made a mistake that could not be erased, but he also understood that the only way forward was to change himself. He promised silently that he would treat every customer with respect from now on. Outside, life continued. People came and went. But the story of the humble farmer and the lesson he brought with him stayed in the air like a gentle reminder. It became a story repeated by the staff. Whenever someone forgot to be kind, it became a quiet example of how one simple man, without raising his voice or showing anger, managed to teach a whole bank about dignity. And somewhere in the back seat of the car, the old farmer looked out the window with gentle eyes, feeling grateful not for attention, but for the hope that maybe his small idea would help his village. He didn't want praise. He didn't want recognition. He only wanted fairness. And that, in the end, was what he received.